John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. The border has emerged as a top issue for voters heading into the 2024 elections. We saw this in Iowa, we saw it in New Hampshire as we were covering the primaries there over the past 2 weeks. This issue ranks even higher than the economy. Art Del Cueto has been with Border Patrol since 2003, and he's been with the National Border Patrol Council for the last 10 years. Art Del Cueto, kind enough to join us here on Newsmaker. Art, always great to see you.
Thank you.
Tucson, and it's quietly become the biggest entry point in the nation.
Definitely. It's been number one for quite some time when it comes to gotaways. And I think that's where people need to realize, and it's difficult, honestly, it's difficult for the media. Let's look at what we have here, right? You have a lot of the focus in Texas because you have a lot of assistance and help from the governor, from other agencies. You know, everyone allows you to film, go down there, talk, see what's going on. But it's the silence and it's the things that are happening in the shadows in Tucson that doesn't get too much attention. And it's because it's limited access. You look at areas like the Tohono O'odham, Native American reservation, where it's limited to go down there. That ranks still as the #1 area in the entire country when it comes to gotaways. And that's what the scary part is. It's so easy to come across, turn yourself into a Border Patrol agent, ask for asylum. It's just unimaginable how horrific the criminal background is on those individuals that are trying to even evade that simple step. And it's because, obviously they have a more extensive criminal background.
Art, how worried are you that folks who want to do harm to America are coming here? I'm talking about terrorists. We keep hearing this. God forbid, nothing has happened so far, but people are starting to talk about this, that it's a real threat. How do you feel about it?
I'm not terrified that they're coming in. I'm terrified that they're already here, to be honest. And it's very frightening. It's very nerve-wracking. You see people on their day-to-day lives and they don't realize how bad it actually is or how it can get. But because, you're seeing it on the front lines, you're seeing, the amount of individuals, you're keeping track of, gotaways, and it's over 2 million now. I'm sorry, but those individuals that are trying to do harm, they're already inside the country. They're plotting on what they're going to do next. And it's very scary to think about that way. And you have an administration that just refuses to do anything about it. And what people need to understand, and I know elections have consequences, but you got to start looking at, everyone's going back and forth on the primaries right now. But the bigger picture, again, that's what we need to look at. The drug cartels don't care whether you're Republican or whether you're Democrat or what political party you are in any way, shape, or form. They just want to make money, and they realize that right now, under the current administration, they're able to make this money because there is no borders. There is no border security. And I think that's where people need to realize, what is more important to you? Your day-to-day security, the security of your kids in schools where the drugs continue to come in, the security of America in the future, or what somebody posts on a social media? What really affects you, and what is more of a problem? And people need to make that decision come election time.
Art, in the past, it seemed that the Border Patrol, ICE, all these agencies were pretty agnostic when it came to politics. But now we're seeing people working the front lines very candidly kind of taking a political position. They're saying the Republicans will stop this, the Democrats won't. That's a tricky situation for a federal agency to be in.
No, it definitely is. And I think a lot of the times, look, from the National Border Patrol Council spot, and that's where I speak. I don't speak on behalf of the agency. I don't represent the agency when I do interviews in any way, shape, or form. The NBPC has always been very vocal of what is right for, our nation's borders, and obviously what's right for the agents, and, trying to make sure that they're taken care of. But it is a tricky situation. A lot of times what you start hearing, and that's what even makes it more frustrating, you hear a lot of the individuals, once they retire, people in leadership, once they retire, they're very vocal. Well, to be honest, it's upsetting sometimes, because I say to them, where were you when you could have made a difference? When they were in a leadership position, they could have spoken up and said something, and they chose to remain quiet. So that's, I think, what makes it even more frustrating. And it's frustrating for the agents that are out there working each and every day, because they don't see any type of backing whatsoever from this agency, from this administration at all, or a lot of the leadership. And that's, I think, what the frustrating part. And to be honest, this can end today based on policy. You hear people bicker back and forth. Let's do this. Let's do that. All you got to do is put policies in place that work. And unfortunately, this administration just refuses to do that.
Okay, so you're telling me there are laws on the books right now that, if enforced, could stop this?
Yes, policies is what it comes down to. When individuals come across the border, instead of just allowing them to ask for asylum and you release them, what you should do is you should detain them. Detain them. Don't just release them. Detain these individuals, have them prove their asylum claim. Look, I am pro-immigration. I am anti-illegal immigration. And that's where the problem is right now. People haven't been able to differentiate that, and they attack one side or the other. Look, if you apprehend these people when they've come across, you detain them, you have immigration judges and asylum officers there at the detention facilities, and you look at the case and you say, look, you're not eligible, and you immediately send those people back. That lowers the flow. The reason people keep coming across is because they realize they just say asylum and they get released. And who is it that's taking advantage? The criminal cartels. And who else? God knows who else is coming across, because you have nothing but military-age men that continue to come across. They claim asylum and they get released. If you're running away from something, you bring your family. If you're running towards something, you come alone. And that is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing military-age men that are coming alone, that they're coming into the United States, asking for asylum, getting released, and they know that there's no one that's going to detain them.
That military-age man, is that code word for potential terrorist, criminal?
Well, look, it's what it is. It's military-age men that are saying that they're leaving their country because, they fear what's happening there or persecution. But in reality, all they have to do is claim asylum. Look, most of these individuals that are coming across, I'd say over 90%, already carry a handwritten note in their pocket that says where they're going, who's sponsoring them, a phone number of who to call here in the United States. What does that tell you? That shows that they're not scared to tell you where they're going because they don't believe you're ever going to go after them. And two, it also shows that they're not scared of being detained. That alone is enough of a sign that says, as long as I give you this paper, you're going to release me, and there's nothing you're going to do about it.
Art, when they have that slip of paper that says where they're going and they've got a contact, who's organizing all this?
Well, they come across with it written already. So a lot of times when they come with everything already packed, so they have their backpack with what they need, the water they need, whatever it is they need, that's organized by the criminal cartels. And you got to remember, when you're seeing people that are coming into the United States from over 160 countries, and at the same time, you're seeing that the criminal cartels like the Sinaloa cartel operates in over 160 different countries, then they're making enough of those, criminal connections so they can bring people across. And before, it'd be difficult because they would bring them across, they would charge them a certain amount of money, and they would have to worry about where to stash them. You don't hear stash houses in the United States anymore.
No, you never hear it anymore. Art, I'm curious. You said that if we stop them and detain them, it would stop instead of just letting them enter the country. How would we possibly detain the kinds of numbers, 300,000 in the month of December? How could we possibly detain that kind of number of people?
You wouldn't see those numbers. The minute you start detaining them, the numbers will start dropping because the word gets out quick amongst the criminals. They say, hey, they're no longer releasing you. So that alone drops the numbers. That'll drop the numbers because the incentive is not there no more. The reason you don't speed on the highway is because you're scared to get the ticket. If the police would stop giving tickets for any infraction, then people would continue to commit crimes. The reason this is happening is because the criminal cartels and the people that are crossing realize that there's zero consequence for their crime.
Art, do you believe Congress will come up with a deal? Because I'm skeptical, because it's a potent political issue for the Republicans now. This is a winning issue for Republicans. So my question is, why would they come to the table and give President Biden a victory going into an election?
Listen, I really don't know where they're going to end up. I wish I could. I wish I could tell you, yeah, they're going to come up with a reason. They're not going to come up with a reason. The reality is that the only ones that are suffering is the American public. And again, as I've said many times, the criminals, the cartels, the people that are making money on this and they're gaining, they don't care. about American lives. They don't care about, the left or the right. So something needs to be done. But at the end, regardless of what side of the aisle they stand on, what they need to focus on is the future of this country. And we won't have the country that we have if we keep going in the direction that we're going now.
One more thing, we got about 40 seconds. I'm always just amazed that I don't feel like we're seeing the effects of this in Phoenix, for instance. I know on the border you are when the numbers come across and they're getting ready to go out and fan out to different parts of the country. My sense is they're not staying in Arizona largely. Do you share that view?
No, definitely. A lot of them are not staying in Arizona, but unfortunately, the criminal cartels, the cartels themselves, they have plants already within different areas of Arizona, and Phoenix is a big area where they have these plants because they got to figure it out. If individuals are coming in and they're bringing drugs in the country, you got to get the money out. So, that's where a lot of the issues happen in border states is the money that these cartels are getting off of the drugs like fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamines. It's going out somehow, and it's from plants that they already have on their border states.
Art Del Cueto, National Border Patrol Counsel and longtime border agent. Art, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We are back in a moment on Newsmaker, and we're going to talk to a local political consultant on the presidential primaries. The Jeff DeWitt, Kerry Lake dust up over an apparent attempt to bribe Lake into dropping out of the Senate race, and the state of politics in Arizona with Marcus Dell'Artino next on Newsmaker. Back on Newsmaker, the New Hampshire primary is in the books. Former President Trump goes 2 for 2, winning Iowa and New Hampshire back-to-back. Historically, any candidate who's won both contests goes on to win their party's nomination. So why is former UN ambassador and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley staying on to fight another day? Marcus Dell'Artino is a partner at FirstStrategic. He was John McCain's deputy director of the Southwest region during the 2008 campaign and worked on his insurgent 2000 campaign as well. Marcus, great to see you.
Always great to see you, John.
Well,
that was 100 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It was. It was 24 years ago. Marcus, let's start with Iowa, New Hampshire. We just got back from there. I was watching this kind of on the ground. Yeah, it was cold. And Nikki Haley was still hanging around. Now, what was interesting is she actually comes in third in Iowa, but somehow after Iowa, she becomes a two-person race with Donald Trump. It was a very interesting dynamic as DeSantis dropped out. Why do you think Nikki Haley is hanging around?
Hey, you know what's interesting is before DeSantis decided to get out, she was really starting to get close to Trump. Like, could be neck and neck, arguably. As soon as DeSantis got out, I think the bottom sort of fell out of the campaign in New Hampshire. It looked like those voters, were splitting somewhere around 65-35 back to Trump. So I think that really took the wind out of her sails. I think that she thinks that she's got a chance in South Carolina, and she's holding on to see that. But what I fully expect is within, maybe 24 to 48 hours of South Carolina, if the numbers don't look good, she very well may get out. I know these politicians talk a big game about I'm going to stay in and I'm going to go till the end, but nobody's surprised when they decide to pull the trigger and get out.
There were a lot of parallels I was drawing to John McCain in 2000 and 2008 in New Hampshire because that electorate set up very well for him. He's kind of a centrist, he's a moderate, and Nikki Haley was kind of finding that lane in New Hampshire, and I thought, she's got a fighting chance there, but she was down by 20 and ended up losing by 11 or 12. So in the end, it didn't change things very much. And it was interesting how the media spun a double-digit win for Donald Trump as, not a great night. I'm thinking, boy, a double-digit win in any political race is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a great night for him. Come on. And I think what was interesting, you're totally right. To some extent, I think that also shows sort of the death of the retail politics too. I haven't fully analyzed that, but I'm getting the sense that those using a John McCain strategy from 20 plus years ago isn't translating anymore. Those town halls aren't working it like they used to, and so you can run much more of a national campaign in New Hampshire than you could 20 years ago, where you had to meet the bar at least 7 times for him to even consider you.
I know, and that is so interesting.
What's also interesting is, though, Trump got a pretty sizable chunk of those independents. And I think he should probably have been celebrating that a little bit more in his speech afterwards, is talking about, in addition to the Republicans I'm thankful for, I'm also thankful for those independents who show that I have appeal in the general election.
Marcus, let me ask you about immigration. We were in Iowa, which is 1,500 miles from the southwest border. I don't know what New Hampshire is. It's got to be over 2,000 miles, maybe 2,500 miles from the southwest border. And immigration is the #1 issue. This issue has exploded after the national media largely ignored it for 2 years. It can't be ignored anymore because people see with their own lying eyes what's going on. Here's a question. With that in mind, and we're in an election year, do you really believe Republicans are going to make a deal on the border when they think they've got a potent campaign issue right in their back pocket?
Boy, it's funny that you bring this up, because I was just talking about it this morning, and the evidence certainly dictates that no. And I probably couldn't be more heartbroken about it and think it's unfortunate that we can finally get to a point where we've got something moving forward. And I'm not too sure everybody understands how frustrating it is to be in a border state and having to deal with this stuff for the last 20 plus years, if not longer, really. But it sounds to me like, and I've always said that, this is an issue that honestly, at the end of the day, is not that difficult to solve. The problem is that the politics of both sides don't want to get a solution.
That is so upsetting to Americans when they hear somebody say that.
And I probably would not have said that 5 years ago, but I'm definitely saying it now. And the evidence is there, the proof is there, the recording is there, if you will. The senators are now admitting that they would rather not solve immigration now so that Trump has the #1 issue to run on, which is also true. I mean, it is the #1 issue. It is the most motivating issue. It's when I'm out talking to voters, that's what they're talking about with me. But they want to save that issue for a campaign issue.
Yep, I think so. All right, I've got to ask you about this whole kerfuffle. I don't even know how to describe it. Kari Lake and the recording, and Jeff DeWitt, the former Republican Party chair here in Arizona. What do you make of this whole thing?
My first blush is it's just weird. The conversation was strange, but I will say this: the practice of a party chairman, and both Democrat and Republican Party chairmen have routinely talked to people who are running for office about possibly running for a different office. I might have 3 people running for governor, and I need to see if I can get somebody to run for Secretary of State, Treasurer. That's sort of a strategic job of a party chairman. This discussion was way different. And I don't know if he was trying to be glib and joking around with somebody he thought was a friend, but there's this reference to, these East Coast guys, and it almost sounds like it's a mob type of scenario. He jokes about, being scared to get in his cars. The whole thing's strange. That all being said, at the end of the day, it will make little to no difference. The way we have reformed campaign finance laws have drastically changed how the party functions in a campaign year. Most of these candidates are doing their own fundraising. Kari Lake's going to have her own ability to raise money. She's not dependent on the party. Donald Trump's going to have his own money, not dependent on the party. And now we have independent expenditures, and those are largely being function of the state legislature, actually, right now, where they're raising millions for those. So the importance of the GOP, the state GOP, raising money to do some of these core functions isn't really there anymore.
Are you telling me that Kari Lake doesn't need the Republican Party apparatus to run her Senate campaign?
Yeah, no, she's got her own apparatus. She's already got that function there. So there's very little that they can sort of fold into. I mean, I'm sure it'd be nice to have, but remember, she's got her own apparatus going.
So why?
And in addition to that, I also had Turning Point.
Why kneecap Jeff DeWitt? What's the point if he's not really a factor?
Well, he was, Jeff was starting to raise money for the party. And traditionally, I think both parties were having a little struggle raising money. And certainly the Republican Party was in that boat. But Jeff had started to turn around and was raising some money in there. I'm not too sure the source of the consternation there. Probably only time will tell, or maybe it'll all go away. But I think, again, at the end of the day, from a strategic standpoint, I'm not too sure it's going to make a significant difference.
But in the short term, does it not make Kari Lake, aside from the tawdriness of the whole thing, does it not enhance her reputation as being somebody who can't be bought?
Oh, yeah. Well, it fits into her message point perfectly. I mean, she certainly sort of said that. And as a matter of fact, it brought this whole issue up 10 months ago, I think it was.
Right.
But almost close to a year ago. And so it's been laying out there for a long time. And she's always said, I can't be bought. And I think I think her message point is sort of dovetails into this whole scenario, if you will.
What do you make of the canceling of the Trump rally here in Arizona? How do you read that? Is that in reaction to all of this?
I can't help but to think it is, only because they don't know what they're walking into. Now, do they also have the convenience of saying he has to appear in court tomorrow? Yeah, and that's a great excuse, because that's pretty important that you're in a courtroom. But I also think that when there's this much uncertainty on the ground, you want a moment. If you're staffing the candidate, you want a moment to sort of get a grip on what exactly is happening on the ground and how you're going to handle it, because those microphones are going to be in your face as soon as you step off that plane.
Wow. Okay. There are some issues that could be on the ballot this year. I think it's pretty safe to say this abortion issue is going to be on the ballot. And the Democrats want it on there because it'll drive turnout. Is that a big driver of the electorate? Because the polling, at least in New Hampshire and Iowa, showed that actually abortion was not a big issue among the electorate there. I don't know what it would be here, but it was interesting that wasn't top of mind.
Yeah. What I think is also interesting is this really is a national strategy. When you look at some of these competitive states, the abortion question is coming up on their ballots as well. So this isn't just Arizona. But I think what we're seeing is that immigration has actually exceeded that question. And so if you've got a race on which issue is going to draw more people out at this point, I'm at this exact moment in time, immigration's winning that fight. It may get some of the younger female voters out, maybe some moderate voters that don't have a tendency to vote in every single presidential election. But I'm not seeing any evidence that it's going to be the big mover that I think everybody was hoping for.
Okay, Marcus Dell'Artino, partner FirstStrategic, longtime John McCain helper in the Southwest. It's great to see you, my friend.
It's always great to see you, John.
Appreciate it. Marcus Dell'Artino. We're back in a moment on Newsmaker.
The question we really should be asking is, are they coming here?
There's so much we don't know. We're going to just explore this and talk about it. The government is now saying, yeah, there's stuff going on that we can't quite explain. I think we have to keep an open mind about this. My only suspicion is that they are concerned that we might make contact. Last month, we told you to be on the lookout for something special. Well, it's time. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m., a Fox 10 special event, UFOs Searching for Answers. My in-depth conversation with a guy you all know if you watch the program, UFO extraterrestrial expert Jeremy Corbell. Watch it on the Fox local app. Download it on your favorite streaming device. And always, thank you for joining us on Newsmaker. We'll see you next week.